Hi everybody, this is Nick Lowe, and this is Magnifier.
Lately when I go to steal a kiss, I feel you pulling away.
Well, as regards the title of the album, The Old Magic, there isn't really any hidden meaning in it. I just thought it was a snappy title, 3 words, so generally, in my view, the best album titles. It's quite a common expression, the old magic, in the UK. Generally, you hear it a lot in sports commentators. Generally, if there's an old, slightly over-the-hill player that they've wheeled out for a match, a football match or something, the commentators will say, well, the crowd here is very anxious to hear whether Simpson has still got the old magic.
Don't freeze me, baby, I'm no dinky-doo, I'm a sensitive man.
As regards feeling the old magic, that is elusive, and I find more and more now that it does take quite a long time to come up with the material and make it sound as if it hasn't taken much time to come up with it, and it is elusive, and that's why I generally take a lot of time between records. I'm not very prolific.
You can hear that in my song. I'm a sensitive man.
Has my songwriting style changed that much over the years? I still like the same stuff as I always did, and I'm very lucky that I'm in a position to be able to do it and see if I can refine it, and make it. Basically make it simpler. That's always seems to be it. You strip away until you try and get to the essence of it.
You've practiced and rehearsed it, but in your heart you know.
Yeah, my basher nickname, yes. In a way, yes, I still do bash it out, but I do a lot of work before I go to the studio to bash it out. When I do a lot of not bashing the thing out ahead of time, because I do my records. I make in a fairly by no means retro way, only retro insofar as I use real musicians and record in a real recording studio, which a lot of records aren't made like that anymore. And I like to have a fresh feel about it. I would describe it as that, rather than bashing it out now. Have a fresh feel about it, and in order to do that, you have to do a lot of work ahead of time before you get to the studio. So there's a bit of both, really.
Little boy lost look that used to work so well doesn't anymore.
I think probably watching The Detectives, I think, is probably my favourite, because that was the last record I did with Elvis where he sort of did what I told him to do. It was pretty early on too. We went on and did about 5 or 6 other albums, where he was, I was saying, what would you like to do today, Mr. Costello, But watching The Detectives was a really great version of that song, which sort of came along sort of by accident. Actually, I can't claim credit for every note being mine.
Cellophane lays or dead giveaway.
The last record I actually produced was with a group called the Mavericks, and they asked me to do a track for them, so I'll tell you exactly when it was. It was for a movie called Apollo 13 with Tom Hanks, and it was pretty good fun. I didn't really have to do very much except stand at the back of the studio and tell them they were great, while a fleet of, or a whole army of people, not a fleet, a whole army of people did all the work that I remember having to do when I was producing records regularly before I gave it up. Yes, my job seemed to be to make sure that I had a good suit on. I felt in the sort of early 80s like that my time had kind of come and gone in that respect, and the way I used to produce records was very much in the old-fashioned way, where you were a kind of a cheerleader, really. You'd go into a studio with a bunch of people, a group, say, and you'd just try and get them to really go for it and encourage them and keep the vibe going. You know, things flagged, but then almost overnight in the 80s, a whole new way of making records started to come along. It was much more digital thing, sitting in front of screens, and there was you were supposed to have a result. You know, there was no such thing as, well, the boys weren't quite on form that day. You know, we'll have another go. You know, that went out of the window. And although there are some fantastic records, of course there are. It's been a long time since the early 80s. Now there's some fantastic records are made in that way. I just wasn't very interested in it, and I wasn't very interested in learning about it either. So I let it go, and now, although I do my own records with my fantastic team, you know, that I work with all the time, I tend not to produce other people anymore.
Your same old used to be. We'll see.
Well, it's not harder to make music now. It's a lot easier. You can get a result. You know, you can make something that's not a very good song sound like a pretty good record. You know, so pretty good is the new rubbish. You know, and so we're living in a sort of tsunami of pretty good. You know, depending on your on your point of view. So the competition is that much harder. I mean, there are still people who are prodigiously talented, but I think it gets harder to actually find them, because there are more people who aren't talented making records than there are people who are talented making records. So it just gets very, very much harder to find the good stuff.
A stylish plan, and you'll do it driving over to.
So the older you get, the more your quality control gets much more acute. You know, something that you would have been very satisfied with at one point suddenly doesn't satisfy you anymore, and you're always trying to surprise yourself and make it and come up with something that doesn't really sound like you, paradoxically.
You'll last about as long as stoplight roses.